Hey guys, welcome back. So today I'm so excited to start reading a series that is one of my most beloved series of books ever. I feel like it's a series that really sparked a huge interest in reading for me back in these years when the books were out. Yes, we're talking about the Twilight series by Stephenie Meyer. Twilight was actually first released in October 2005. That is 17 years ago. 17 years ago, I was 33 years old. And I just know after I read Twilight, while I was waiting for the other books to come out, I really started reading a whole bunch of other like vampire series and really getting addicted to reading again in my 30s, which was great. What we're gonna be doing in this next series of videos is reading Twilight, and I wanna do it kind of more reading vlog style. I want to read the book, and whenever I find myself inclined to wanna share something with you guys, I'm gonna turn on the camera, I'm gonna talk to you guys, I'm gonna share whatever it is that's on my mind that I wanna talk about. And FYI, I'm pretty sure this whole series of videos that I'm gonna make on Twilight are not going to be spoiler free. Like if I read something in Twilight and I wanna mention something in Breaking Dawn, like I'm not gonna hold back. So I'm just gonna assume you've probably already seen the movies at the very least. So Twilight is written from Bella's perspective. From the very beginning, she shares how she's leaving Phoenix, Arizona from living with her mother and her new stepfather, so her mother can travel around with her new husband, who's a baseball player. So she's gonna go to Forks, Washington and live with her dad for a while, just kind of give her mom some freedom to travel with the new husband. So she used to always go to Forks, Washington like a couple weeks in the summer and then like Christmas vacation or whatever, but she hadn't been there in a long time. And she's kind of an awkward person to begin with. And here her dad's picking her up from the airport and they're kind of, awkward conversation in the car type thing. And right away when I was like, oh, this is gonna be really difficult to read without comparing all the time, is Charlie ends up telling her about the truck that he bought her, this used truck, on the way home, where we know in the movies when they got home, Jacob was there and Jacob's father, and Bella was like introduced to them. Do you remember them? And Jacob's like, yeah, or one of them says, I think we made mud pies together. That does not happen in the book at all. In fact, 53 pages in, the beginning of chapter 3 called Phenomenon, I'm right at the part where the car is going to skid across the parking lot and crush into Bella, but Edward races across the parking lot and, protects Bella and knocks the car out of the way. Bella has yet to have a conversation with Jacob, meet him, anything. So I just find that little tidbit interesting. Like I wonder why they decided in the movies they wanted to introduce Jacob even before Bella's seen Edward for the first time at school. I just feel like that's a pretty big detail that Jacob was introduced to us first. It's kind of interesting. Alright guys, I am plugging along in Twilight and it is not going as quick as what I thought it was going to. I swear I feel like it's because I started taking CBD like 2 or 3 weeks ago to help me go to sleep at night, and so a lot of times I'll read for a little bit, but then like once it's about 11:30, I'm like, okay, I need to get ready to go to sleep, so I take my CBD. And normally I would never finish reading in the middle of a chapter, but my eyes start getting so heavy and like I'll be like, doing that, and I'll literally stop reading in the middle of a chapter, which is so unlike me. I'm usually that person's like, one more chapter. So I'm trying to just read a little bit throughout each day, or I'm never going to get this done in time for Sunday's video. It's Monday right now, so we should be good. I just wanted to say that sitting here reading, and it's at the part where Bella's at La Push Beach and she finally talks to Jacob for the very first time in the whole entire book. Like that's when he was like, oh, I'm Billy Black's son. I'm on page 140, which is chapter 7. And it wasn't until chapter 6 that Bella talked to Jacob for the first time. So that blew my mind. We're a little more than a quarter of the way through the book, and Jacob's finally in the story. I feel like the one thing that they are following the book pretty closely is the majority of the conversations between Bella and Edward. There's differences, but I really, in the book, feel their connection so much more than in the movies, like early on. I think because you get to experience more of Bella's thoughts and feelings. Like, I stopped right here because I feel like the movies don't necessarily make Bella a very likable character. Of course, she's really awkward and stuff, but if you read the books, Bella is so much more likable. Like, here, she had just woke up from having a nightmare. She's contemplating whether or not she wants Edward to be part of her life because of the warnings that came from Jacob, that of the cold ones. And Jacob flat out didn't just say cold ones, he said, you people call them vampires. Like, he flat out said this. In the movie, it like takes Bella going to the bookstore, getting this book and putting 2 and 2 together with Google searches and whatnot to be like, oh, Edward's a vampire. She's already realizing just from Jacob's conversation that she doesn't really know if he's a vampire, but she clearly knows something about him is very different because of his speed, being able to knock the car out of the way, all that. She knows something is different about him. She's suspicious. That's why she just woke up from this nightmare. But here it's saying, like, I ate breakfast cheerily, watching the dust motes stirring in the sunlight that streamed in the back window. Charlie called out a goodbye, and I heard the cruiser pull away from the house. I hesitated on my way out the door, hand on my rain jacket. It would be tempting fate to leave it at home. With a sigh, I folded it over my arm and stepped out into the brightest light I've seen in months. Don't forget, Twilight books are young adult, so we're not talking like super complex writing here. But Bella is just a totally different person in the book than she is in the movies. And was that on purpose, or was that just Kristen Stewart's acting? I don't know. There's also this girl, Lauren. She's like this mean girl that whenever Bella brings up Jessica and Angela, there's this Lauren girl. I do not remember her being in the books at all. Obviously, she's not a very important character because she's not even in the movie. And every time they say her name, it just irks me so bad. It's like, we don't care about this girl. She does not play any importance. Quit bringing her up. So, I have a long way to go, but I'm actually really enjoying it. It took me a little bit there to be like, quit being so nitpicky and comparing every sentence to the movies. It's okay. It's the same story. It's just a little bit different. Alright guys, I thought I would give you a little update of where I am with Twilight. So I have about 80 pages to go. I actually am at the part where the baseball game is finished and they now have to figure out what they're going to do about James, because he's obviously going to track Bella down and that whole thing. Since I last chatted with you guys, I put some notes in my phone because I know I would forget. I would be like reading and I'm like, oh, I gotta mention this. A lot of times I'm reading at night and Ken's watching like Everybody Loves Raymond or 2.5 Men. It's not like I can turn the camera on when the room's dark and whatnot. So anyways, back to the restaurant scene where Edward tells Bella that he can read minds. And you know how in the movie he's like, you know, I know what everyone in this room's thinking about. Sex, money, cats, I think he says. Like, that wasn't in the book. Like, there's so many little tidbits in the movie that I'm like, God, genius that that stuff was added in. However, I feel like if the book has gone on, I've enjoyed the book more than the movie, just because you get such a better look at who Bella really is. Like, Bella's constantly cooking meals for her dad, checking in on him, making sure he's doing okay. And you just get this like whole, like, she's just aloof, doesn't care about anybody. And you don't even really quite understand her true connection towards Edward until the other books, the other movies.
But she's obsessed with him like immediately. Like she's already asking him like, could we ever get married? Could we ever have children? She's having some serious thoughts in her head pretty quickly. Oh, I also mentioned too that the scene following the restaurant scene where he drives her home, like that played out so different in the movie as well. The conversations that took place during that car ride were pretty intense, and that did not really happen in the movie other than when she touched his hand and felt that it was cold. But that had already happened in the book like a long time ago. I had wrote down as an example where one time Edward left to go hunting and he was gone for 3 days. And when he got back, Bella was like, you know, you could have called and just checked in with me, let me know you were okay. And he was like, why? You know, like I was checking in on you. I knew you were doing okay. And she's like, but I didn't know that you were okay, Edward. Like, why didn't you call? She was like so worried about him. Like she thought him being out hunting and being a vampire was dangerous. Again, you don't get any of those feelings in the movie. Like it would have been kind of cool if she would have had more open dialogue with like Jessica or Angela, having those conversations like, God, I haven't heard from Edward. He hasn't been in school for 3 days. I'm like worried about him. Like I feel like they could have really played up Bella's character so much better. Okay, this is a huge one, and then I'll finish here. I'm gonna finish reading the book tonight, and then I will do a final wrap-up analysis of the book tomorrow. The name of the book, Twilight. We actually learn in the book why it's named Twilight. We don't learn that in the movie. And I never really thought about, like, the 2 hands with the apple, like, what does that have to do with Twilight? And even when I read to you the part in the book that talks about it, it kind of, the photo, this image still doesn't really make sense, but we learn why it's called Twilight. So about halfway through the book, they're in the car talking, and she was nervous about Charlie coming home and finding them sitting there in the driveway talking. So Bella looked at Edward and she was like, what time is it? And Edward said Twilight. And then, quote, it's the safest time of day for us, he said, answering the unspoken question in my eyes. The easiest time, but also the saddest in a way. The end of another day, the return of the night. Darkness is so predictable, don't you think? He smiled wistfully. I do not remember reading that when I read the book for the first time, and I thought that was really cool. So now I'm excited to see when I read the other books in the series. Is this something that continues? Like, is the title of the book somewhere in the book? I don't know. I hope we get to learn more about the titles of the books. So comparing the book from the movie, which is ultimately kind of what this video ended up being, but not on purpose, it's just really hard not to do. I definitely like the book better for so many reasons. I would say the primary reason is just because we get to know Bella so much better. Developing Bella's character to make her someone very likable. I don't feel like the movie really did that. Especially, it's hard though too, because you look back at the movies, they've been out for what, over a decade. The first Twilight movie was actually released in 2008. So when you go back and watch it, like any older movie, you're like, oh my gosh, this acting is horrible and that sort of thing. Now, I will say, even since day one watching Twilight, I feel like the color in the movie Twilight, when Catherine Hardwicke was the producer, I think that was her title, or maybe director, I'm not sure. I didn't really like, and I actually preferred that she wasn't the director for the remaining movies. I feel like they actually got better, but if it wasn't for Catherine, maybe the casting wouldn't have ended up being what it is, so praise the Lord for that. I am still a huge Kristen Stewart fan. I love Robert Pattinson, loved him in Batman. I love all the films she is. I feel like she gets a lot of grief, and maybe she made some poor decisions in her past, but haven't we all? I just feel like she's judged really harshly in the media. I know that's not what this video is about though. Back to the book. Overall, the one thing that I was waiting to happen in this book, which is so stupid because it's really not an important part for me, is in the movie, starting out from the very first scene, they show a vampire attack. And through the whole entire movie, we keep hearing about bears in the woods. One friend of Charlie's down at the docks that got attacked and killed by the 3 vampires. Like, that happened somewhere in the middle. None of that happened. We don't hear anything about vampires
killing anyone or anything like that until the very end at the baseball scene when James, Victoria, and Laurent show up and cause all the havoc for rest of the book. One of the things that I wish they would have stuck to the book at the very end was for prom. They actually had all the Cullens show up to prom, and I loved how they described how each of the girls were dressed and how they were dancing and just everybody was watching them. I wish they would have put that in the book. I know the end scene needed to be focused on Bella and Edward, but would it have hurt to include the Cullens in there? I feel like, I don't know, Rosalie gets such a bad rap as a vampire. Like, I feel like we never really get to know her except that one scene where later on, I think it's in Eclipse, she tells the story to Bella, like how she became a vampire. They make her out to be so hated, and maybe if they would have included some of the scenes from the book into the movie, she would have been a little bit more likable. Also at the end for prom, Jacob did show up to give the warning from his dad that Bella should break up with her boyfriend and we're watching you and that whole thing. But Jacob actually danced with Bella and told her all that information. And I would have liked to see that in the movie. I would have liked to see them have that little bit more of a personal, intimate moment versus them just sitting on the bench outside of prom. Just my thoughts. So next I'll be reading New Moon. I actually thought about, should I space this out and not just do all the Twilight books in a row, read some other books, get back to it? But the truth is the last, like the whole month of August, I didn't read nearly as much in August as I did the month before. And honestly, right now I'm just busy with a lot of other business related things that I'm really not reading as much, definitely not during the day, more so just at night, like an hour before I go to bed every night. So honestly, having a book to read, having a week to read it, to be able to make a video for you guys every Sunday is not a bad idea for me right now while my schedule's just super busy. So stay tuned next week for the New Moon video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did read along with Twilight, I would ask you to comment down below a few different things, and I'll be reading the comments and replying and so forth. Number one, what was the thing that you hated the most about the book? What was the thing that you liked the most about the book? Maybe you comparing it to the movie too, whichever route you want to go with your thoughts. And then lastly, what did you rate Twilight? Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Was it your first time reading it? How did you feel after reading it so many years later, like myself? I definitely feel like, here I am talking again. Comment that stuff down below, guys. But I just want to add a final thought that I definitely feel like when I read it the first time, I probably loved it a little bit more than this time, but I still really loved it and still obviously give it 5 stars. So comment down below. I'm looking forward to your guys' responses, and I will see you guys next Sunday. Make it a great week. Bye, guys.